The morning air was crisp, the kind that bit at your skin but still carried a hint of promise. Baron adjusted the woolen beanie over his unkempt hair, letting it cast a shadow over his face. His hands, deliberately dirted, tugged at the frayed edges of his jacket. The garment was 2 sizes too big, a thrift store find meant to erase the billionaire beneath it. He stood at the corner of Maple and Fifth, the intersection where hurried commuters mingled with the aromas of brewing coffee and fresh pastries. Across the street, a cluster of cafes was already alive with movement, waiters balancing trays, baristas calling out orders, and customers immersed in their screens. Baron leaned against the brick wall, his stance deliberately meek. He let his gaze linger on the faces passing him by, each one a mystery, each one a potential clue to the question that gnawed at him: when stripped of appearances, how will people respond to a stranger in need? He took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of doubt. What if this experiment was misguided? What if no one cared? Shaking the thought, he pulled a crumpled cardboard sign from his backpack. In shaky, uneven letters, it read, "Just need a little help. Anything is appreciated." The first wave of pedestrians passed by. Some glanced at him briefly, their expressions blank, while others purposefully averted their eyes. A man in a tailored suit muttered something under his breath, his steps quickening as if kindness might cost him time he couldn't afford. Baron's stomach tightened, but he stayed put. This was part of the plan. He wasn't looking for pity or guilt, he was looking for sincerity. As the sun climbed higher, the street grew busier. Baron approached a young woman stepping out of a cafe, her arms full of takeout bags. "Excuse me, miss," he said softly. "Do you have any spare change?" Her brow furrowed. She hesitated, then offered a tight-lipped smile. "Sorry, I don't carry cash." She walked away without a second glance. Baron watched her go, his face betraying nothing. Hours passed, and the rhythm of the street ebbed and flowed. Occasionally, someone would drop a coin or two into the small tin cup at Baron's feet. Most didn't stop. It was a dance he'd expected but hadn't fully prepared for, the intricate choreography of avoidance, indifference, and fleeting generosity. By midday, his legs ached from standing. His hands, though unused to the cold, were numb. But there was still hope. Somewhere in the sea of faces, he believed, there were people whose hearts carried more than convenience. And so, with a quiet resolve, Baron tightened his scarf and waited. The day was far from over. The street hummed with life as the morning rush took hold. Waiters in crisp aprons darted between tables, balancing trays laden with steaming cups of coffee and plates of pastries. Customers filled the cafes, their voices a blend of orders, laughter, and hurried phone calls. Baron, still leaning against the wall, observed the scene. His focus shifted to the workers, the ones who rarely received a smile or a thank you. These were the people he wanted to understand, the ones who served others even as they carried their own burdens. He approached his first target, a wiry young man named Ethan, who stood outside Café Luna wiping down tables. Ethan's eyes were tired, his movements mechanical. "Excuse me," Baron said, his voice low but steady. "Could you spare some change?" Ethan barely looked up. "Sorry, man. Company rules. Can't give out anything." Baron nodded, taking in the slight tremor in Ethan's voice. There was no malice, just a sense of detachment, as though kindness required energy he didn't have. At the next cafe, Baron encountered Rosa, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and a worn apron. She paused mid-step, balancing a tray of croissants. "Sorry, sweetheart, I don't have cash on me," she said with genuine regret. Then, as if remembering something, she added, "Wait here." Baron watched as she ducked inside, emerging a few minutes later with a small paper bag. "Here," she said, pressing it into his hands. "It's not much, but it's fresh." He glanced inside, a muffin and a neatly folded napkin. Thank you, he said, surprised by the lump in his throat. Her smile widened. Take care of yourself, okay? Baron tucked the bag under his arm and moved on, his heart lighter. As the morning stretched into late morning, Baron made his way to a smaller, less busy café. Here, the atmosphere was quieter, the staff fewer. He spotted a waitress, Ava, bustling between tables. She was young, perhaps in her mid-20s, with a ponytail that bobbed as she moved. Baron hesitated before approaching her. There was something in her demeanor, an energy that suggested she was trying to mask weariness with a cheerful front. Hi, he said softly. I don't mean to bother you, but I could really use a little help. Ava stopped, her tray tilting slightly. For a moment, she just looked at him, her eyes narrowing as if trying to read the truth behind his words. Then she sighed, setting the tray down on an empty table. I don't have cash, she admitted. But you look like you could use a meal. Let me grab you something. Before Baron could respond, she disappeared into the kitchen. When she returned, she handed him a plate with a sandwich and a steaming cup of tea. It's on me, she said, her smile tinged with exhaustion. Why? He asked, genuinely curious. Ava shrugged. Because I know what it's like to need a hand. And because, why not? Baron nodded, his respect for her growing. He ate slowly, savoring the food but also the kindness that came with it. Later, as he left the café, he spotted James, a stoic waiter at another establishment, leaning against the counter during a break. Baron approached cautiously. Any chance you could spare some change? James frowned, reaching into his pocket. Without a word, he handed Baron a crumpled $5 bill. Thanks, Baron said. I appreciate it. James gave a curt nod, his expression unreadable. But as Baron walked away, he glanced back to see James watching him, a flicker of something, maybe empathy, crossing his face. The day was beginning to shift. Among the indifference and avoidance, Baron was finding connections, each one revealing a different layer of humanity. By the time the sun began to set, the streets had transformed. The morning bustle was replaced by a quieter, wearier rhythm. Lights from cafes cast warm glows onto the sidewalk, and the air carried the scent of grilled food and faint traces of exhaust fumes. Baron adjusted his beanie and stepped into the evening crowd, his movements slower now. The day had taken its toll, but so had the stories he'd glimpsed in the eyes of those he'd approached. As he passed a small diner, a waiter named Sam caught his eye. Sam was in his 30s, his broad shoulders slouched as he cleaned tables. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, and his face carried the weariness of someone who had been on his feet for hours. Baron hesitated before stepping closer. Hey, Baron said, his voice hoarse from the day. Sorry to bother you, but, could you spare anything? Sam paused mid-wipe, looking at Baron. Unlike others, his gaze lingered, studying Baron with a mix of curiosity and caution. Finally, he straightened, tucked his cleaning rag into his apron, and motioned to an empty chair. Sit down, Sam said, his tone firm but not unkind. Baron blinked, unsure of what to say. He obeyed, settling into the seat. Sam disappeared into the diner, returning moments later with a cup of coffee and a plate of fries. He set them in front of Baron and slid into the seat across from him. You don't look like the usual folks around here, Sam said, leaning back in his chair. What's your story? Baron hesitated. This wasn't part of his plan. Just, trying to get by, he said vaguely. Sam raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Look, I don't know what you're going through, but life's hard enough without someone kicking you while you're down. You eat, all right? Baron nodded, his chest tightening. There was something raw and genuine in Sam's gesture, something that made Baron realize he wasn't just performing an experiment, he was becoming a part of these people's lives, even if only briefly. As he ate, the two exchanged small talk. Sam shared bits of his life, his long hours, his dreams of leaving the city, and his hope of opening his own restaurant someday. Baron listened intently, his respect for Sam growing with each word. When he left, Baron felt a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. He was beginning to see the weight of kindness, especially when it came from those who had so little to give. The following morning, the cafes hummed with their usual rhythm, waiters weaving between tables as customers sipped their first cups of coffee. But today, something was different. Baron walked into Café Luna, no longer the young beggar with the tattered clothes and dirt-streaked face. Now, he was Elon Musk, clean-shaven, sharply dressed, and exuding the quiet confidence that had made him a household name. The waitstaff froze, their eyes widening as they recognized him. Rosa, the middle-aged waitress who had given him a muffin, nearly dropped her tray. Ava, the young waitress who had offered him a meal, stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "Good morning," Elon said, his voice warm but commanding. "I owe you all a proper introduction." The room fell silent as Elon explained his disguise, his reasons for posing as a beggar, and what he had been searching for. "I wasn't looking for charity," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "I was looking for humanity, for those willing to show kindness even when it wasn't easy." He turned to Rosa first, handing her an envelope. "Inside is an invitation to a personal development program I've designed. It's exclusive, intensive, and fully funded. I'd like you to join." Rosa's hands trembled as she accepted it, tears welling in her eyes. Next, he approached Ava and handed her a similar envelope. "Your generosity reminded me of something I'd nearly forgotten, that even small acts of kindness can change someone's day. Thank you." Finally, he sought out Sam, finding him at his usual post at the diner. Sam was cleaning tables, his brow furrowing as Elon approached. "Elon Musk," Sam said, his voice laced with disbelief. "You didn't ask for anything," Elon said, holding out an envelope. "You gave without expecting anything in return. That's rare, and I want to help you achieve that dream of yours. This program might be the first step." Sam hesitated, then accepted the envelope with a nod. "Thanks," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. As Elon left each cafe, he felt the weight of the experiment lift. He had found what he was looking for, proof that kindness still existed, even in unexpected places. And now, he had the chance to give back to those who had given so freely. A week later, Ava, Rosa, and Sam arrived at the venue mentioned in the envelopes. It was a sleek, modern building tucked away from the city's chaos, its glass walls reflecting the sunlight. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation as attendees, carefully chosen by Elon, gathered for what had been described as a life-changing opportunity. The trio found themselves seated at a round table with a small group of others, all sharing nervous smiles. Ava glanced around the room, her heart racing. She still couldn't believe she was here. Sam, sitting next to her, looked calm, but his fingers drummed lightly on the table. Rosa, meanwhile, clutched her notepad, ready to absorb every word. Elon entered the room, his presence commanding but approachable. Dressed in a simple black sweater and jeans, he looked more like a mentor than a billionaire. "Welcome," he said, his voice resonating through the space. "You're here because you showed something rare and extraordinary, kindness without expectation. Today, I want to help you turn that kindness into strength, not just for others, but for yourselves." The day was divided into sessions, each designed to empower the attendees. There were lessons on financial literacy, goal setting, and strategies for overcoming personal and professional challenges. Guest speakers, including successful entrepreneurs and life coaches, shared their journeys and offered practical advice. In one session, Ava found herself working on a vision board. She had always dreamed of opening a small art studio, but she had never dared to believe it was possible. As she pinned her ideas to the board, she felt a flicker of hope. In another session, Sam sat with a financial advisor, discussing ways to turn his dream of owning a restaurant into a reality. For the first time, the idea felt tangible, within reach. Rosa, meanwhile, attended a workshop on leadership and resilience. She thought of her family and the long hours she worked to support them. By the end of the session, she had a newfound confidence, a belief that she could inspire others just as much as she cared for them. Throughout the day, Elon moved between groups, offering encouragement and insights. He made a point of speaking to Ava, Rosa, and Sam individually, reminding them of the qualities that had brought them here. "Your kindness was a choice," he told Ava during a break. "And that choice is what makes you extraordinary." By the end of the course, the attendees felt a sense of transformation. They weren't just leaving with knowledge, they were leaving with a purpose. The streets of the city hadn't changed, but for Ava, Rosa, and Sam, the world now seemed full of possibilities. Each of them returned to their lives with a renewed sense of hope and determination. Ava began sketching designs for her art studio during her breaks, saving every spare dollar to make her dream a reality. She found herself smiling more, her confidence growing with each step she took toward her goal. Rosa, inspired by the leadership workshop, started mentoring younger staff at her cafe. She found joy in helping others succeed, her laughter infectious as she shared her wisdom. Sam took the biggest leap of all. Armed with the financial plan he had developed during the course, he quit his job at the diner and began working on his restaurant. It wasn't easy, but he knew it was worth the risk. Elon, watching from afar, felt a quiet satisfaction. He didn't need public recognition for what he had done. The real reward was seeing how these small acts of kindness had sparked something extraordinary in ordinary lives. One evening, he returned to the same street corner where it had all begun. Dressed once more in his beggar's disguise, he leaned against the wall, holding a familiar cardboard sign. This time, the words were different. "Thank you for believing in kindness." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elon smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. Somewhere in the city, lives were changing, and he knew that this was only the beginning.